today's World Insight. Lights, camera, action. The film industry back on its feet as cinemas are back in business. How movie makers are doing amid the pandemic. And a first farewell does well at the box office. The story behind the beautifully shot sleeper hit with the writer-director.
是对我童年时光的一段回述。
Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, on CGTN. We begin with the ongoing 10th Beijing International Film Festival. It was set for April but postponed due to the COVID-19 outbreak. The 8-day festival, with some programs offered online, will showcase more than 300 Chinese and foreign films. Now, coronavirus infections have eased in most parts of China, and movie theaters are gradually reopening in the country's low-risk areas. But a full recovery from the pandemic is likely to be months away. So, what's the long-term damage to the film industry as a result of the pandemic, both financially and creatively? Has the viewer's habit irreversibly changed to a new normal? Let's loop in our panelists for answers. For more discussion on the global film industry under pandemic, we have in New York Joanne Chung, intercultural film critic and filmmaker, and in Beijing, Ben Ji, producer and former executive at Warner Brothers and Disney, and also in Beijing, Teng Jimeng, a freelance cultural commentator and professor. Welcome to our program. The three of you is such a wonderful thing to see you after such a long time. Tell me more about how the movie market is working right now, especially here in China. Ben, what about your take as a film industry insider?
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see the reopening of the theaters in China, and it's a very special experience for me to re-enter the cinema after all this time. It's 8 months, I think. I went to see the new movie, The 800, and it's very interesting that because of the social distancing regulation, every audience there's a empty seat between all the audiences. It's so you don't have to hear all this annoying chit chat anymore. So it's a very special experience.
And no popcorn, no water either. So how did you like that movie?
It's a very important movie, not just at this critical time, and also for China's film production, for China's film business. It's technically it's the first Chinese movie shot by IMAX cameras, and also it's about that very special part of the history in China. So it's a big war movie, and I think director Guang Hu just improved the kind of level of China's war movie to a new level. So it's really worth seeing, for Chinese audience.
It certainly has increased our appetite for a consumption, at least of that movie, that war epic in a way. But Professor Tang, as a film critic, how do you see the market, the just opening film industry here in China?
I think it is exciting. It is mind-blowing. I mean, to be back in cinema to watch a film again. I mean, like to watch the 800. And also small budget art house movies such as Dwelling in the Fuchun Mountains. All these great movies are actually kind of enticing the moviegoers and cinema buffs back to movie theaters and try to reopen and try to contribute to this reopen, and also I mean, basically, once again, the prospering cinema market here in China.
Right.
I'm glad that this period also coincides with the Beijing International Film Festival. I mean, these two events, coincide to make this summer, this very great kind of a summer break, even more exciting.
Joanne, tell me more about where you are. You are based in New York, and things are gradually getting back to normal. How are you looking from afar the Chinese movie theaters and the movie industry scene?
Here I am sitting in New York City. We are about 1 month up behind you, and the pandemic came just a little bit after. So therefore, the cinema has been closed for about 6 months here. So people were hiding away. So people are very skeptical at this time in history. We don't really know how the movie market will go and whether the audience will go back to the theater. But based on what you're saying, based on the performance in China, I am becoming optimistic. Again, China is doing much better. China will become world's possibly #1 market in the future. As of now, it's still setting the record for the world market. So I'm very optimistic at this point. New York or the United States has opened in about a week. We're going to open about 42 states. About 50% of the market here with the social distancing, about 50% capacity will be honored. And in about another week, we're going to have 75% of theater about to be open. So we're behind you. So congratulations, China.
We're looking forward to it. We hope the global market would all work together at the same time. You know, earlier, a lot of you talk about the specific works, whether they are interesting and exciting enough to bring back the audience to the theater. One of those you all mentioned is 800. The good news is, for now, the preview sale of 800 topped the daily China box office chart already, a new high since movie theaters started to reopen on July the 20th after months-long closures to contain the coronavirus. And we see this war epic film won praise from moviegoers and critics alike after the preview screening began on August the 14th, grossed a total of 114 million yuan from previews only, less than 3 days before the film's release in China. Of course, the film has already been released as we speak, and also we are looking forward to see its final performance. Having said that, though, Ben, you give us a little bit preview of the film already, but whether this film is going to be unique enough to bring everybody into the theater and also bring the audience curious about what kinds of potential Chinese movies could have, both content and technology, it's a big question mark, but certainly a wonderful question to tap into.
我就想看一眼上海怎么样。我就是害怕，我怕我死掉了，死掉了什么都没有。我要回来！我要回来！一个人一个名，家里派的早就立好了。
是个什么？
你良心的话，丈夫举国，是为情死。
The Japanese are approaching from the north. It's beginning.
Well, the 800, it's a big, let's call it a kind of a tentpole movie or event movie. It's big enough. It's a special effect. It's a story, and it's the cast of the all-star cast. All these things you cannot easily get from the internet shows or variety shows. So I believe this will be very effective to attract audience back to the cinemas.
There's a lot of stories, in fact, behind this film. I'm sure we're going to have the opportunity to explore many of them as time permits. But on the other hand, this gives us an opportunity to look at China's box office, with the starting of the 800 war epic in the movie theater. The China box office raked in 50 million yuan, or about $7.2 million on August the 2nd. That is before, of course, the release of the movie 800. Still, the figure is small compared to last year's average of 176 million yuan per day. How should we see this comparison? Is it really a reawakening, a reset, Ben? If you look at the numbers, there's heaven and earth difference.
It's pathetic, actually, compared to the past years. Of all movie professionals, we have this app, Taobao, or Taopiaopia, or Dengta to check the daily numbers from the industry every day, but for the past 8 months we just stopped checking it anymore. But the thing is, really, for China's film industry, we have experienced a serious setback or serious setbacks last year in 2019 because of the government's new taxation regulation and also the departure of capital or financing to the show business last year. So it's already big strike, big impact to the film business, film industry. And this year with the outbreak of pandemic, it's let's call it we can call it a fatal strike to the film business. And well, it's good to see the reopening of the cinemas and people starting to go back to see the movies again. But the thing is, because of all this epidemic, period, people are more and more people, even the film fans, are starting to watch a lot of shows or movies online. They sort of having this new habit of checking the new releases online, new films online, and also, and I think this new thing just accelerated the kind of competition from the streaming business to the traditional film, exhibition film screening in cinemas. So this is a potential kind of impact, potential risk for the traditional film industry.
Will the market change, and will the audience appetite and the way of looking and watching films change, Professor Tang?
Viewers actually change his habit of watching films. For me, for example, I actually stopped watching films in movie theaters because I have to stay home and watch them on smaller screens, such as my computer or even my TV, on my TV screens. And so viewing habits are actually have been challenged, have been changed. And secondly, in terms of content, there's huge loss of content, real created content being lost due to this very pandemic, because filmmakers, including writers and directors, they could never meet and discuss potentials, possibilities, and to create the new content that appeal to this new age audience. Thirdly, I think there's also financing. Financing became also an issue. I mean, I work with the director, a former sixth-generation director, and he has a very beautiful script. And then he had nobody to turn to because financiers are actually now hiding behind the doors. The impact was not just twofold, but it's threefold, and even see more in terms of this very the current context.
When Chinese filmmakers, like your friends, were describing how they have been coming through this period of time, what about filmmakers where you are? And what about the U.S. film industry, even though that's a big question, but your take about the reality?
Well, the reality is the filmmaker here has been moving into more of a digital kind of production. Movie release mechanism has at this very moment turning into online streaming, as everyone has said. When we look at this cinematic landscape in COVID times, we're still looking at how China portrays stories. When we talk about events film, when we talk about 100 years, we hope we don't see a lot of propaganda film. You see, Western audience wanting to understand China. So I'm very optimistic. And filmmaker here, actually, Hollywood has been doing great. They revamped the Harry Potter film and relaunched it in Chinese movie theater. They make a lot of money there. And they have Interstellar. And they're going to have Chris Nolan's new film. So I think China is doing great and collaborating with Hollywood. But I think Hollywood has so much to catch on. I mean, putting their hope back into theater. I am grateful and very hopeful, actually, about theater going. I really think there is no replacement for immersive environment. Although the trend seems to be hiding at home and seeing small screen, I am absolutely sure theater going is the future. If you are confident about pandemic, it's going to go, perhaps not next year, and then you should be confident about theater going. That's the trend. That's
we
the
hope that
future.
will
So
be still the trend. But, you know, tell me more about the latest example of Mulan. It was supposed to be released much earlier, but due to the pandemic. And now online streaming seems to be the way in the United States, theaters later. But at the same time, it's likely also to be shown in China very soon in big theaters. So how should we understand, you know, Hollywood blockbusters these days and their fate, both in the home market and in a global market, such as one in China, which is earlier already in recovery? Joanne, your take.
Well, Mulan story has been a historic epic for, Chinese, children, they know this story. And Hollywood did very well with animations in 1998. And here we have a live action. We have all these famous actors and actors here. So I think it will be doing great in movie theaters, I think. It's just a matter of time. Again, it's delayed, but again, people will come back for this. China should continue to produce universal stories. Mulan is a great story. It has a universal value, and I think we should invest more. Filmmaker, in Hollywood here, they're investing so much on Chinese iconic story. I think Chinese filmmakers need to tell their story more in a universal way, so that perhaps more cultural in translation can be done over there. China has so much to give, so much to dig into. I think Benji will do great and to do more stories, and we will do more and in a cross-cultural platform. 2 points. I would like to also approach the other two panelists about that. First of all, the format. You know, Mulan, it could be one of those examples, how it worked in the U.S. market, global market, particularly China market. And secondly is about, you know, what is going to happen to international cooperation in terms of films, content, cooperation format, and also business models. This is going to change as a result of geopolitics, too. So, Ben, if I could invite your take first about, first of all, Mulan's way of release in China, U.S., how does that work?
Well, for Mulan, I think it's a very smart strategy for Disney to put it on Disney Plus. Is not just because of the pandemic, and also because Disney is trying to catch up with the whole, competition of the streaming players. You know, they set up their Disney Plus, and I think it's last year, right? They launched that, so they need a big product to promote their website. So it's a very good timing, and. I was involved. I was involved in the distribution of Mulan, the animation version of Mulan many years ago. I think it's 1999 when it was working with Disney in China. So speaking of the cooperation between China and international or China-U.S. cooperation, I think Mulan shows a very showcase a very interesting direction for co-production, because Mulan, the story is about family value, and family values are universal themes. And also there's action scenes and war scenes, which can be easily, it's very easy to be understood by the audience worldwide. And but because of the new changes in China-U.S. relations, I think this will have a very big impact on the future cooperation between China and U.S. because it was very good actually, because it's I was a co-producer. I'm the co-producer of the Meg. It's I think it's the only or the biggest China foreign co-productions in film business. So we tried, and I think we succeeded in doing a new model of China-U.S. co-productions, which is trying something not about history, not about the kind of very complicated cultural stories. It's about future. It's about people's fighting with the monsters. It's a science fiction movie. So after the success of the Meg, I got a lot of a script, a lot of projects from both Hollywood and China, trying to do co-production, but because of the new China-U.S. changes, everything has stopped. So I don't see in the near future, well, at least before the election in November, that there will be new big, large-scale China-U.S. co-productions in movie business. Yeah.
What's going to be the impact of geopolitics? It's not far away from us like it used to be, but it's right around the corner for the film industry, Professor Tang.
First thing first, I think co-production used to be my favorite. Co-production used to be very big here in China, and because of the geopolitical reasons, China and the U.S. are two big superpowers that joined hands in telling the world about how the war was fought, how we fought the aliens from the outer space, how we unite in faith, in thought, and in ideas in defeating this very alien invasion. But now I think the problem arises due to this very COVID-19 and perhaps the emergence of new issues in geopolitics. Think about the cultural differences. Think about the cultural discount every single co-production has to cope with. Benji was right in terms of co-production having a hard time dealing with sophisticated history. For example, John Woo's The Three Kingdoms, The Red Cliff, and then all these stuff actually are supposed to be classics and box office revenue takers. But then it turns out, these films are doing poorly overseas because of this very sophisticated, long kind of a history being told, and the history behind the history, the story behind the story, in terms of revealing this very new sort of a plot. So I think Mulan created a new model. Yes, I agree. Mulan has been a new model, has been on this very cutting edge in terms of innovation and recreated power, because Mulan is now seen as a Chinese character. Mulan is seen as a universal character, fighting on her father's behalf in the battle against foreign aggression. At the same time, it is also about humanity. It is also about common humanity. This young lady fighting like a man and being challenged by her peers around, and also the kind of the various kinds of heroic inconveniences that she had to cope with. So in a sense, I'm looking for stories that are more human, that are more of universal values, and that are more of kind of telling a story, even though it is set in China, but then telling a story about the world.
Geopolitics will be a big role there in production?
It is going to turn inward a little bit. I think it is going to be turning inward a little bit because of this very pandemic, because of this geopolitics thing.
Okay.
And so it's very hard to see whether this model is going to succeed or not.
Okay. And Joanne, your take?
So we're entering a very controversial time, a time that we really have to think where we stand as human, as civilization. The next 3 to 6 months will set the direction of civilization. It is much more than films. So films has too much been employed as a political tool. I don't like that. We really need to return film as entertainment. If we can give up ideology, forget about communism, capitalism, let's just think about what's good for humanity. That's the role for a filmmaker. We need to fulfill our responsibility.
Okay.
I think we are entering a challenging time. We need to work together.
Finally, before we go, the good news is the 10th annual Beijing International Film Festival is already underway, has had a rough year earlier, but already starting. So what can we see? Digital streams hosted by iQIYI traditional television, 18 cinemas and venues across Beijing, and 24 outdoor viewings. Some 300 Chinese and foreign films will be shown over the festival's 8 days. Gonna be a huge, how shall I say, feast of some of the best films in recent years all over the world. Are you looking forward to it, Mr. Ji?
Yes, of course, but well, I tried to get a ticket online, but it's gone like 1 second.
I know.
Yeah.
Me same. I'm trying my best, but still. Professor Tang?
Yeah, I mean, I will continue to watch them on TV. I mean, streaming is my choice right now. Yeah.
Okay. And I want to wish the three of you safe and sound, and hopefully the film industry will function as it used to be or even better with new technologies and even with the taste changing of the audience all over the world. Thank you so much for your insight and also your input in this discussion. Ben Ji, Teng Jimeng, Joanne Cheng, thank you. And you're watching World Insight. Still to come on our program, lights, camera, and action. Cinemas are back in business, a lot of them showing the film A First Farewell as the very first movie since the pandemic. The story behind the beautifully shot sleeper hit with writer-director
对我来讲，它是对我童年时光的一段回溯。
Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. The film A First Farewell was the very first film to appear on the silver screen. On the first day, cinemas reopened their doors to the public on July the 20th in China. We long for reunions after a long time spent apart. That is something perfectly captured in that film. More than 170 days ago, Chinese moviegoers had to bid farewell to cinemas due to the coronavirus outbreak, but not anymore. They returned in droves to see the movie featuring Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region's spectacular scenery through the perspective of 3 children. On the opening day of this film, despite strict social distancing in place in theaters, it raked in nearly 1.5 million yuan in ticket sales. Well, that's not necessarily impressive before the pandemic, however, extremely impressive after it, leading the race in the daily revenue at the box office. We got a chance to talk to the film's writer-director, Wang Lina, on the beautiful stories behind the film and how to bring cinemas back to life. And I'm joined by Wang Lina, director of the film A First Farewell. Lina, what a pleasure to see you. What a wonderful movie. Tell me about the story you're trying to portray in the movie.
那我觉得，对我来讲，它是对我童年时光的一段回溯。
For me, I think this is a memory from my childhood. This film took nearly 4 years to shoot because non-professional actors were cast. I also hope that through this film, I can authentically present my true feelings and the imprints of time. This is, in effect, a long poem dedicated to my hometown and childhood. I think the poetry of life itself and this land, the simplicity and sincerity of people, they are the inspiration of this film.
那其实这个故事呢，是发生在我的家乡。
Actually, this story happened in my hometown. Shaya is in the hinterlands of Taklamakan. It tells of 2 families, 2 children, Kalbinur and Isa. The 2 kids are innocent childhood friends, living their ordinary daily life in a period of their childhood, and they continue to say farewell in their lives.
一个告别，对。
I don't know. I've been thinking about a lot of movies when I'm watching this one. This is, of course, is once again in the wild, wild west of China. It reminds me a lot of movies, you know, like some of the Iranian movies, some of the latest movies that are quite popular in the world. Tell me more about whether those are some of the inspirations for you when you're trying to tell your own story.
对，那其实我也非常喜欢像阿巴斯呀、西兰呀，然后包括贝拉塔尔这些导演他们的作品。
I really like the films of directors like Abbas Kiarostami. Their works are extremely poetic. As Abbas said, all poetic movies will last longer than storytelling movies. I totally agree with this aesthetic view. I hope that a first farewell also is poetic. It can break through the barriers of linear logic through the poetry of daily life and reproduce the complexity and subtlety of life itself.
分离再现，就是生活中的复杂与微妙，或者是真谛与本身。
Why is it so important that you want to tell like stories of real life? Usually real life stories are fresh, however they could be low paced and they would not be that dramatic. But why is it so important for you?
其实，在我还是一个刚刚成年的时候，
When I was just an adult, I watched Abbas's film, Taste of Cherry. It is about a middle-aged man suffering from bankruptcy. He slept with his family that night, but the next morning he left a suicide note, then was about to end life on a mulberry tree. A group of children passed by the tree. They asked if he could pick some mulberries for them. He did that. Those children ate and went to school happily. The man then looked up and saw mulberry shining under the sun. At that moment, he gave up the idea of committing suicide. He took the mulberry and ate it, also picked some mulberries for his family, then returned home and threw away the suicide note. This story has been enlightening for me until now, since it reminds me of my childhood. At that time, I lived in a small village in the hinterlands of Taklamakan, which is full of mulberry trees. Every morning, when we went to school, there were some grandpas and uncles picking mulberries for us. Many years later, when I saw the story in Taste of Cherry, I felt that this is just life. We live in different countries, but at that moment, I feel connected and touched. It is a simple philosophy of life. In A First Farewell, I cherished the little moments in daily life that touched me, just like the mother and father singing love songs in the cotton field, singing that 8 heavens are not as beautiful as you. I hope what has left a mark in my life can be presented in my film.
日常生活能够在第一次离别里头呈现。
Working with the whole family is kind of interesting, isn't it? That you are someone from outside, they are, you know, a group for years. So how does that, what was it like for you to be that way?
那我一直觉得，就个体的奥妙是非常珍贵的。
I think the mystery of the individual is very precious. What you can see is limited, but what you can create is infinite. That's what I love very much. I hope people in my film showed what their life is really like. This is what I cherish. It took me 4 years to finish shooting the film. And for 2 years, I went into documenting and cultivating close relationships with my non-professional actors to understand all the moments in their daily lives and the way they communicate. You will know what words will make them angry and happy. I lived with them and had meals with them. After 2 years of getting along, they no longer fear my camera. They said they could ignore the camera now. Some people have watched my film and said it looks like candid work. My actors and I get along like relatives. Kalbinur sometimes called me mother. So after having such a foundation, I started the shooting.
所以就有了这样的一个基础之后呢，那才有了第一次离别的拍摄。
When you say you're so familiar with this family, you're embedded almost in this family, what do they like the most when it comes to food?
这个完全考不到我。
This is easy. Their favorite meal is large plate chicken, because in Xinjiang, large plate chicken is delicious.
放羊，那他最喜欢吃的就是
They also herd sheep, so they also like mutton. It's roast lamb or roast whole lamb or lamb chops.
Where do they like to go
我觉得
for fun?
最喜欢的是在庭院里有好多人来他们家做客，然后
Their favorite place is the courtyard, where they play host to many visitors. They can have barbecues and dances, like a nighttime bonfire party. Because they are very hospitable, and there are grapevines in their yard, and the yard is large, every evening they invite musicians from the village to their yard. Together, they dance mashrap. When it comes to going out to have fun, I don't think they have this tradition. But these nights in the courtyard are their happiest.
About the editing of the movie, because you've been producing the movie for 4 years. That's a lot of material. You have to select the best, put the logic there, get the story correct, and make it fascinating. I mean, fascinating in a way that you like. How does that work? I know also the editor that you have hired is coming from another culture. I remember it's from France. So there seems a lot to be communicated about. Lina.
对，他说他第一次看到了这些，在塔克拉玛干腹地遥远的塔克拉玛干腹地的人的生活，他们是那么的真。
He said that for the first time, he saw what life is like in the hinterlands of Taklamakan. People are very sincere and touching. He also felt the story is particularly true and poetic. Of course, he made some creative changes in the film. For example, originally, the film ending was another one, but he gave the film a different but creative ending, which I think is very good. Because I lived with those children for 4 years, there were a lot of fixed views in my mind, but I think the new ending given by my editor is also good.
算4年的时间吧，然后有很多这种固定的一些东西，但是另外我觉得剪辑师给到的一个结尾是蛮清晰的。
Finally, there's a question I really want to ask you. Even though you are telling a story in the movie, I want to ask you about your life in Xinjiang and your reflection upon, many of the news stories related to Xinjiang these days. Many of them are extremely negative, very political. Some describe them even biased. Tell me more about what you thought about those stories and the Xinjiang that you know, the Taklamakan Desert that you know.
所以我觉得我可以分享的是，我从小就是我的父母那一代就到了新疆，那我的。
When I was a child, my parents and I moved to Xinjiang. My father was a photographer. He took pictures of Uyghur tribes here, and there I was sitting behind his bicycle. He used the lens to record portraits of many people. All of them built a very good relationship with my father. There was an uncle. When my father took pictures of him for the first time, he told me that people in the world are all relatives. I was really impressed by these words.
就像我为什么会讲起这个桑葚的故事，是因为我在童年的时候，我经常可以看到维吾尔族老人，然后他会地下铺个毯子，然后摇一些桑葚，就会。
In fact, when I was a child, I often saw old Uyghurs spreading a blanket on the ground and shaking the trees for mulberries to drop. They would say, "Child, eat some mulberries and you will be sweet all day." I think this kind of ordinary warmth, this kind of warmth between people's hearts is very touching. Even when we got into some old man's carriage, he would say, "Children, let my horse carry you for a while." He wouldn't say, "Let me carry you for a ride." He said, "Let my horse carry you for a while." And he also teased that if you can count how much beard he had, he would give us some grapes. So we started counting. But beard cannot be counted. Yet we still got grapes. These are the things left in my heart. Now in the hinterlands of Taklamakan, people still sing and dance as before. They also have troubles in their lives, such as marriage, their children's education, how the family can live a better life. They are busy with these, but at the same time, they are enjoying happiness in singing and dancing. I think everyone in the world is like that.
Lastly, I really want to congratulate you for that movie. It's a wonderful movie. It's a beautiful movie. And meanwhile, it is the first movie they've shown in China after the COVID-19 pandemic. So congratulations, multiple times.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wang Lina, the director of the film, A First Farewell. Movie director Wang Lina telling the story from Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region through the eyes of 3 children. That's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Insight, or check out our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching.